The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
We have breaking political news out of Texas today, where a Democratic candidate for Senate has taken a bold and courageous stand against meat. The stakes could not be higher. We have the details in just a few moments. We'll also have the latest today on the war in Iran. Another top regime official has been eliminated. Lots of action on Capitol Hill today. Markwayne Mullin is in his confirmation hearing for DHS right now. It included a clash with Senator Rand Paul. We've got the audio of that. It is Wednesday, March the 18th. Scott Jennings is reporting to you for Salem. We remain on the campus of Arizona State University today in Tempe, Arizona. We have a big show today. Jim Jordan, the House Judiciary Chairman, is here. Aaron McLean from the Art of War podcast. And our old friend Elise Stefanik is coming by today. She has a new book coming out. Plus, we have breaking news all over the place. But we do begin in Texas, where Democrats still have a mess on their hands. The mess is getting bigger every single day. We have reported to you before on the bizarre past of U.S. Senate nominee James Talarico, who previously, we told you, said he believes there are 6 genders and that a non-binary God offered the Virgin Mary an abortion. But today, perhaps he has committed the most unforgivable sin that a candidate can commit in Texas. He has come out against meat. It is a mistake that only a radical Democrat could love. And it's also a reminder that this campaign of Talarico's is not very well done. We have the audio here. James Talarico says he will solve climate change by taking away brisket from Texans. Take a listen in cut number 4.
We have, I think, heard more and more issues of animal welfare. I think not just because it's the right thing to do and the moral thing to do, but also it's, as all of you know, necessary to fight climate change. It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption and that we try to respect animals in all aspects of society. And so I am proud to say that our campaign has officially become a non-meat campaign. So we are only buying vegan products from our local vegan businesses. Some of you may know Big Nona's. They were little Nona's, and then they opened up brick and mortar, so another Big Nona's. But we just got our pizza from there today. And so the point is that I think all of us, not just policymakers, but everyone has to take personal responsibility in this effort.
It is sort of amusing to this reporter that Democrats have decided that this is the version of a human male that is most relatable to other human males. I don't know a single male, in fact, who talks this way. My guess is neither do you. But Talarico isn't exactly rare when it comes to so-called moderate Democratic candidates having a bad week. Up in Maine, the leader in that state's Democratic primary for Senate, Graham Plattner, has backtracked on his apology for having a Nazi tattoo. You heard that right. Plattner had a Nazi tattoo on his chest for many years. When he decided to run for the Senate, he apologized and claimed he had no idea it was a Nazi symbol, and then he had it morphed into something else. Well, now Plattner says, you know what? I'm no longer apologizing for that. And his appearances with anti-Semitic podcasters and political figures continues to raise eyebrows. Now, about 5 years ago, Plattner was openly referring to himself as a communist, and that was about the time he was the firearms trainer for a socialist paramilitary organization. And all of this is on top of new statements that have come to light about Plattner's views on women who unfortunately suffered an assault. Now take a listen to this new ad being run by Plattner's opponent, the Democrat governor of Maine, Janet Mills, in cut number 5.
Did you know Graham Plattner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting.
Plattner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Plattner, seriously.
We blame the victim? That's a horrible thing to say.
Disqualifying. I have not seen this.
He's a bully.
This guy gives off a vibe.
Just no way I could vote for you.
No.
Graham Plattner, the closer you look, the worse it gets.
I'm Janet Mills, and I approve this message.
A Nazi who hates women? This is the person who is leading the Democratic Senate primary in Maine, folks. The person around whom the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party has rallied. But Plattner is not the only Democrat with a troubling history of his attitude towards women coming to light today. One of the star Democrat recruits for a U.S. House seat is named Bobby Polito, a Tejano singer who won the Democratic primary in the Texas 15th Congressional District, purporting to be the moderate candidate. The Republican incumbent here, by the way, is Monica de la Cruz. It turns out the Democrat Polito once played a pervert in a music video who masturbates in public. Again, I remind you, this is what constitutes a moderate Democrat these days. You can see the offensive video on the screen here. I'm being told the video is too offensive for us to play here on the Salem News Channel. We can't even show it to you. So what do we have here? Talarico, the man who will solve climate change by outlawing barbecue in Texas. Plattner, the Nazi tattoo guy who denigrates female victims of abuse. And Polito, the masturbating musician. No wonder the Democratic Party is less popular than Chuck Schumer manning the grill at a cookout these days. In other news, the TSA situation at America's airports is getting worse by the hour thanks to the Democratic shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. Here's how the Today Show reported on it this morning. Listen to it all in cut number 7.
This morning, the wait getting worse at airports across America.
Well, hopefully you get here early, because otherwise you're not going to make it.
The spring break rush colliding with a mounting TSA staffing shortage, with officers now working without pay for a 32nd day amid the ongoing partial government shutdown.
It's a travesty. It really is disappointing that the government can't get their stuff together.
So far, more than 10% of officers have called out nationwide, roughly a third not showing up for their shifts at JFK, Houston, New Orleans, and Atlanta, where lines backed up to the front door.
It's been kind of a nightmare.
Starting today, Philadelphia International is temporarily closing security checkpoints inside 3 terminals to optimize operations. Meanwhile, the TSA's acting deputy administrator issuing this grim warning.
If this continues, it's not hyperbole to suggest that we may have to quite literally shut down airports, particularly smaller ones, if call-out rates go up.
There's no real mystery here about why this is happening. Democrats have this shut down. They care more about keeping illegal immigrants in this country than they do about you making your flight. That is truly the bottom line here, and why they continuously vote to keep the Department of Homeland Security shut down. Now, the White House and Senate Democrats did exchange some offers yesterday on a possible deal to end this shutdown, but so far, no white smoke, and the shutdown drags on with travelers left in limbo. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton is unveiling legislation today that would denaturalize criminals who are convicted of felonies and also terrorists. And it would add any felony conviction as grounds for revocation of naturalization. Cotton responding to recent terrorism acts by naturalized citizens who probably should not be in the United States any longer. On Capitol Hill today, Markwayne Mullin is in his hearing for Homeland Security Secretary. He clashed right out of the gate with Rand Paul of Kentucky, the committee chair. There's no love lost between those two. We'll try to bring you some of that exchange during the show today. Tulsi Gabbard has a hearing today. We're keeping tabs on what Tulsi says on Capitol Hill. And the Senate yesterday voted to open debate on the Save America Act. We're going to follow up on that today as well. A lot of action on Capitol Hill. We may hear from Jerome Powell at the Fed today, and Vice President Vance is speaking in Michigan. Also, the president is on his way to the dignified remains transfer of a fallen soldier at Dover Air Force Base. We are tracking it all here on the Scott Jennings Show, including the war against aches and pains. And the weapon that you need in this war, take it from me, Relief Factor. Since discovering Relief Factor last summer, the Jennings household has had an amazing experience. Thousands upon thousands of people across this country have tried Relief Factor and reported the same thing. It has made a difference in their life. And now Relief Factor, which is always improving, has added a premium black pepper extract to the formula because it helps your body absorb the ingredients more efficiently. Relief Factor was already great. Now it is even better. If you're taking something daily, you want to know, is my body using this to the highest benefit and its ability? With black pepper extract, the answer is yes. My advice, get the 3-week quick start for just $19.95. You have nothing to lose here. Other than the aches and pains, you can lose those. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. When we come back, more on the resignation of Joe Kent from the White House. Turns out he was singing a different tune on Iran just a few months ago. The grift that never ends. Scott Jennings is on Salem. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, I got to tell you, I think nutrition has gotten way too complicated. Every week there's a new powder, a new lab-created formula, some new breakthrough. But here is the truth. We've been told since we were kids to eat our fruits and vegetables. Nobody really had to explain why. We just did it. Because when you eat whole foods, you're getting phytonutrients, those natural compounds that your body uses to adjust, repair, and respond every single day. That's not hype. That's how human beings were designed. That's why I take Balance of Nature. They use a tailored vacuum cold process that stabilizes the phytonutrition in fruits and veggies, so you're getting real whole food nutrition, not synthetic substitutes. Their whole health system includes fruits and veggies plus fiber and spice, 47 ingredients in one simple routine. I take it myself. If you want to fight the good fight, go to balanceofnature.com to subscribe and save today. Join hundreds of thousands of customers in one simple routine that is changing the world.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
Welcome back to the show here on Wednesday, March the 18th, broadcasting live from the campus of Arizona State University. Beautiful campus, interesting place out here. We've had a great visit to Arizona. We'll be out of here today, but we are grateful for the hospitality for everyone. We were over at Arizona State last night. The Institute of Politics hosted David Axelrod and me for a great discussion. We had a full house, sold-out crowd, actually. They couldn't accommodate any more bodies in the room. We had a nice back and forth. Ax and I had a spirited debate in front of the audience about a number of issues, and then we caught a spring training game last night, the Cubs versus the Angels. I have to say, even though I'm a Cardinals fan, the Cubs spring training facility, not bad. If you want to catch a baseball game out here in the spring, it was really one of the best I've been in. But anyway, bottom line, Arizona's great, and everybody here has been super nice to the Scott Jennings Show. I do want to remind you, by the way, that we are still recruiting people for the unforgettable Gulf of America cruise, which is happening this November. I know you're looking at those fall vacation plans right now. I would humbly request that you consider the Gulf of America cruise. I'm going. Mike Gallagher is going. We have a lot of personalities that are going to be on the boat. Luxury ship. Great destinations, great food. We're going to have a lot of great programming for our loyal listeners on the ship, and it'll be right after the election, so we'll have a lot to talk about and unpack. Here is how you get on this cruise in November 2026. You text the word cruise to 94878, or you visit scottjenningsshow.com, and you click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. That's the only way to get on this boat. Text the word cruise to 94878 or go to scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. I want to see you there. Your personal invite from yours truly. We're looking forward to that. So during the show yesterday, we had this news breaking of this fellow, Joe Kent, who worked in the White House, director of the Counterterrorism Center. And to be candid with you, I had forgotten about Joe Kent. I didn't remember that he worked there. And I recognize now why that is, because he had been completely and totally marginalized and cast aside by the White House. Now, you might say, well, why didn't they just fire him if they were going to set him aside? Good question. I'm sure we'll learn more about that. But Joe Kent resigned and sent out this dramatic letter claiming that he, in good conscience, could not occupy his position as long as we are fighting Iran. And he claimed to have been taking this principled stand on this issue, blaming the Jews, blaming Israel. That's very common these days. But it turns out, if you look into Joe Kent's past statements, in the recent past, he was singing a different tune about whether the Iranians posed a threat, an imminent threat to the United States. Just a few months ago, in fact, he was on a podcast with a man named Sean Ryan. I want you to listen to Joe Kent just a few months ago, what he was saying about Iran here in cut number 6.
They're still registering for the draft, aren't they? Like, that's the logical conclusion to the direction that we're heading in right now, unless we make some serious changes.
I mean, I've already heard rumors that Fifth Group is going to be sending guys to Iraq because of the escalated situation with Iran now.
Yeah. I mean, most Americans aren't aware of it. Our troops in Iraq and Syria have been attacked 150 plus times by Iranian proxies. And when we say Iranian proxies, we got to be clear on what that is. That's the Iraqi government that we pay. Because after the Iraqi military, we spent $2 trillion on, surrendered to ISIS, we had to go back in there in very short order and stand the military back up again. And guess who filled the breach? The Shia militias controlled by Iran did. And the Iraqi government's controlled by Iran. So these are...
So Joe Kent on a podcast admitting that Iranian proxies had attacked U.S. troops over 150 times. There are numerous social media posts from Joe Kent saying that we should be attacking Iran, not waiting for them to attack us first. Seems like he had no problem with us taking on the terrorist regime in Iran. Here's one. At Real Donald Trump, we should not sit and wait for the next attack, Joe Kent says. Wipe Iran's ballistic capability out and get our troops out of Iraq. They are our only targets now. Wipe it out, Joe Kent used to say. Now, we just can't in good conscience, he says, be attacking the Iranians. It's amazing how this anti-Israel grift has rotted the brain of so many people, although it was predictable with Joe Kent. This, in fact, was a terrible choice for this job to begin with. He should not have had it. It's better for the White House that he's gone, and hopefully they will choose more wisely next time. When we come back, Aaron McClain is here, host of the School of War podcast. We'll get into the war in Iran after this here on The Scott Jennings Show.
Common sense for the American people. This is The Scott Jennings Show.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, March 18th. Thank you for listening to Common Sense for the American People. It is Scott Jennings here on Salem, and we're broadcasting from Tempe, Arizona today. Arizona State University is our venue for today's show, and we're thankful for the hospitality here. Operation Epic Fury continues. The military domination of the United States and Israel over Iran continues, and we here at the show strive to provide you with the best possible sources and analysis on this and all subjects. And I'm really excited about today's guest because it doesn't get any better or smarter than this. Joining me is Aaron McLean, host of the School of War podcast, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, also newly minted CBS News analyst. He is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and a former legislative director to Senator Tom Cotton. This man knows more about national security and military affairs than just about anybody you're ever going to meet. Aaron, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Wow, Scott, with an introduction like that, I'll do my best. It's great to be on with you.
Yes, you have to live up to this billing now, Aaron, but having listened to your podcast and knowing your good work over the years, I certainly know that you will. Let's just talk about the latest on Operation Epic Fury. It seems like the big news of the week is the continued elimination of these regime officials, this top layer that's left in Iran. You had Ali Larijani, who was the secretary of the National Security Council, General Soleimani, and then one other person was eliminated last night. Talk to us about these eliminations and how you think it impacts the war effort right now.
Yeah, this was the head of their intelligence service who was killed last night. You know, Scott, in the division of labor between the United States and Israel, this decapitation campaign seems largely to have fallen to the Israelis. You'll remember back when the war started, President Trump was it's pretty nuanced in the way that he talked about regime change as a goal of the operation in those initial remarks. He basically said, to put it in my own words, regime change would be nice, but don't grade the United States on that. Our mission is missiles. Our mission is the nuclear program and the Iranian Navy. Those were the three stated missions. The Israelis, I think, have an overlapping but slightly different focus. I think regime change for them is established policy, whether they can pull it off in the next few weeks or whether they are setting in motion things now that maybe they hope will ultimately hatch 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, things like that. But yeah, it's remarkable. These deaths, the ones you just cited, but also, of course, going back to the first day of the war with Ali Khamenei, they're remarkable not just because of who they are and how it weakens the regime to keep losing top people like this, but because of what it says about the state of the art of military technology in 2026. This kind of thing just wasn't possible, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it is remarkable, the ruthless efficiency of it all and the military domination here. I think it's been breathtaking, although it does seem to me, Aaron, that a lot of Democrats, a lot of media people hate Donald Trump so much that they just can't bring themselves to admit, yes, this is a well-conceived plan. This is a well-executed military operation. You know, they hate Pete Hegseth so much that they just can't admit the Pentagon, under his direction, is doing what we would expect them to do, and that's operate at the highest possible level here. I mean, do you see anything here that tells you, A, that we aren't operating at a high level, B, that we had no plan for every eventuality, C, are there holes in any of this that worry you? Because that's the punditry on the left. I want to know what an expert like you thinks, though.
Well, let me give a short version of what I hope will be kind of a sober overview of where we stand according to our stated goals. And I'll go back again to the three categories the president named a couple of weeks ago at the start of things. There's the Iranian Navy. On that category, I think it's more or less case closed. There's just not much of an Iranian Navy anymore. They retain some asymmetric capabilities. There's an IRGC Navy that has some fast boats and various tools. But the main naval force of Iran at this point is largely either at the bottom of bodies of water or has holes in the sides of their craft. There's not much left. Missiles was the second category. There, I think, the sort of numbers of incoming that you're seeing from ballistic missiles in places like Israel or the United Arab Emirates tell the story. You're down 90+% from the first day of the war. They're still getting some shots off here and there. I think getting that number down to 0 is extremely challenging, but a 90+% reduction, not to mention all the strikes on stockpiles and things like that, the launchers, the leadership, the elements that go into that campaign, I think you can make a very strong case that there's military dominance in that category. The nuclear program, third of 3 cited goals on that first day. That's actually interesting in the sense that I don't think there's been much progress there, but we also haven't, to my eyes, made an attempt at progress. Those nuclear sites remain largely in the condition that we put them in June of 2025, when you recall President Trump ordered Operation Midnight Hammer, the bombing by the U.S. Air Force of these sites. Since then, you haven't seen, I saw one report of a strike in the vicinity of Natanz. I've not seen any reports of strikes on the nuclear site in Isfahan. These are the places where we think that highly enriched uranium is likely still buried underground in some fashion. So for me, that's a dog that so far hasn't barked. I'm very curious to see what the plan is there or what's going to come next. And then on regime change, again, the president didn't say that was a goal for the United States, the operation. His rhetoric has shifted sort of day to day. He's flexible, as you know, interview to interview. So he's at various points said something like he wants unconditional surrender. Then he clarified that unconditional surrender might be the kind of unconditional surrender where we just determine that they're militarily so weak they can't go on. We'll see. The thing that I think actually absolutely must be done, Scott, before the president would be able to declare mission accomplished is he's going to need to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That was the Iranians' best card. They've played it. The practitioners, the naval practitioners that I speak to are confident that it can be reopened, but it will take some time. And I don't see any way to reduce the intensity of operations or say that there's mission accomplished without opening that back up.
Do you believe that it is a mistake for our international, well, I'll call them allies for the time being, but a number of countries that we're typically allied with are saying, no, we don't want to have any part of it. Wouldn't it be better if they got involved here and helped us keep the Strait of Hormuz open? I mean, it does, after all, affect the entire world, does it not?
Yeah, that energy price goes up kind of no matter whether you get your oil. The United States doesn't really get much in the way of energy resources out of the Persian Gulf anymore, but the price goes up no matter what. Obviously, a lot of these countries have a direct interest. A lot of this stuff goes to Asia, where our partners there certainly have a direct interest. We could certainly use the help, and the reason we could use the help is the kind of escort operation that you'll see in the Strait. I predict a few weeks from now. Which, by the way, we've done before. The United States Navy did this exact thing in this exact place in the late 1980s. The Iranians were behaving very similarly. They were blowing up ships in the Gulf. They were dropping mines in the Strait of Hormuz. And in 1987, President Reagan ordered an operation called Operation Earnest Will. It's pretty straightforward in its concept. You gather a group of civilian ships at a time, and you have a U.S. Navy ship, or in those days the British and the French navies helped. And like a mother duck and her ducklings, you take those tankers and other kinds of commercial traffic through the Strait, and you have to have your escort pretty close to the ships you're guarding, because in the Strait the space is so constrained that the reaction times, the amount of seconds on the clock you have to respond to incoming is very short. Which means you need a lot of escort ships. The more escort ships you have, the faster the whole operation goes. At the peak of Earnest Will, there were dozens of major American naval vessels involved, so help would be appreciated.
Aaron McClain, that's the voice you're hearing. He is the host of the School of War podcast, national security expert here with us on the Scott Jennings Show. I want to go back to the nuclear issue, because what you get as pushback from the left on this operation is that, Donald Trump told us that he obliterated all of Iran's nuclear capabilities last summer. Now he's claiming that the Iranians were an imminent nuclear threat. I want to play to you a clip from this morning. This is CIA Director Ratcliffe up on Capitol Hill talking to Senator Rounds of South Dakota about the Iranian nuclear ambitions. Let's hear Ratcliffe and then discuss in Cut 22.
I think it's been very clear from the beginning that even though there were supposedly diplomatic activities going on, behind the scenes it was very clear, and I just ask if you would disagree or agree with me on this, it was very clear that Iran, while they were talking, they had no intentions of following through diplomatically with eliminating any of their nuclear aspirations, correct?
Senator, that's correct. And in the classified session, we can go into detail, but you've characterized it right. Diplomatically, they were saying one thing. The intelligence was reflecting quite the contrary.
Aaron, maybe you can take us through Operation Midnight Hammer and the obliteration of these nuclear facilities to them sitting down, the Iranians, with Witkoff and saying, well, we have enough material to make 11 nuclear bombs, to the action right now. Kind of run the thread from these moments and why it is, in fact, an imminent threat to the Western world. It's not just the United States, it's everybody.
Well, look, you can do grievous damage to a series of military complexes like objectively we did in June of 2025 and still have elements remaining that are of concern and which you can't really destroy with a bombing campaign unless, of course, ultimately you achieve some kind of regime change, is policy will. if Ali Khamenei's will, or now his son Mojtaba's will, is to reestablish this program, well, that's a fact on the ground that you have to deal with. And it is generally assumed, established. Everyone works basically on the premise that buried underground at one or more of these sites is the highly enriched uranium that is the sort of basic ingredient of the bomb. There are other items as well. There are these highly specialized centrifuges, some of which may have survived. But it's the highly enriched uranium that is very difficult, of course, to refine to that level, that is of greatest interest. The general thinking is that it is underground in circumstances that it's not publicly known exactly what the nature of underground really means. You know, how much rubble is there? How deep is it? How many, you know, thick doors are closed, and how do you get to it? Like that's not been plausibly accounted for in any source that I have seen. But at Isfahan, probably at Natanz as well, some of this material still exists. So I think, yes, one, if you assume that the Islamic Republic is going to continue and that they are going to have an interest in restarting their program, at some point you're going to have to deal with that issue. I also think, by the way, if you think that state collapse on some level is one possible outcome of either of this military campaign or just possible in the years ahead in Iran, well, then you have kind of a post-Soviet Union situation that you need to contemplate. Like anyone with a bulldozer presumably could get down there and get this stuff with enough gumption and will. And it clearly is in the interest of the United States, but as you point out, Scott, the world, to render that stuff safe one way or the other.
That's Aaron McClain, host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, I know we only booked you for one segment, but I have to say I'm enjoying this conversation. It's extremely insightful. If you wouldn't mind, why don't you stick around through this commercial break and we'll finish off this chat, because I want to hear how you think this is going to end. And that's what most Americans want to know. How long, and let's see how it's going to end. We'll take a break here. I'm going to give you a quick note, by the way, from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. As you know, we're discussing Operation Epic Fury, and in Israel and the Holy Land, the missiles do continue to rain down on civilian populations. It's times like these where freedom and faith go from abstract to concrete ideas upon which we depend and upon which the Israelis and our friends over there depend. That's where IFCJ comes in. They're preparing large-scale distributions of food, first aid, and emergency essentials for this very moment. They're stockpiling these supplies in the bomb shelters and in the hospitals, and it's really Israel's most vulnerable, the sick, the elderly, families with children that depend on the fellowship at times like these. I am standing with Israel. I want you to stand with Israel, and the best way to do that is to go to supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org. Stand with Israel in prayer as we all face down the Iranian terror regime. More with Aaron McClain when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Wednesday, March 18th, doing a deep dive with Aaron McClain, host of the School of War podcast, on the ongoing Operation Epic Fury. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is on Capitol Hill this morning testifying about the war and other issues. Let's hear Tulsi in cut 18.
The IC assesses the regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities. Its conventional military power projection capabilities have largely been destroyed, leaving limited options. Iran's strategic position has been significantly degraded. The U.S.-led maximum pressure campaign and snapback of European sanctions added additional pressure to an already bleak Iranian economy, resulting in mass protests earlier this year that Tehran suppressed by killing thousands of protesters.
Aaron, you hear Tulsi and everybody in our government saying the same thing. The military operation is really successful. We're destroying all of our targets. Here's my question. How do you know when to stop? You know, when do you know that the moment has arrived, that you can't really do anything else? You've destroyed every target. You've met these objectives. What's your, to the average person who's not a military strategist or an expert on this, what's the answer to that question?
Yeah, it's obviously the question of the day, Scott. It's a great question. Let me give you a couple thoughts in response that kind of come from what the Iranians need to achieve. Let's think about that for a second, and then we can understand what the United States and Israel would need to achieve. What the Iranians fundamentally need to do is survive. If they survive, and if in addition to surviving, they can tell some plausible story that the United States and Israel have failed, that in some way they've come out of this stronger. It's a hard story to tell because I think the director of national intelligence is correct there. They've been pretty battered. They've certainly been battered on the missile front. They've been battered on the naval front, a bunch of other conventional military fronts as well. Their leadership's taking big hits. But let's say, for example, that they are able to interdict successfully and repeatedly in the Straits of Hormuz, interdict commercial traffic in the Straits of Hormuz in the months to come. I think that's a good story for them and a bad story for the United States, which is why I really do think President Trump is going to need to get the Strait reopened with an escort operation before he can sort of call this game, or at least this portion of the game. Just sort of gaming it out, thinking about sort of how President Trump sees the world, how he sort of thinks in terms of narratives and stories. I could imagine a world where in the weeks to come, you see escort operations beginning in the Strait. The condition that has to be set, that Central Command has to set to do that, is they have to reduce the stockpiles of Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles, drones, drone boats, et cetera, the kind of stuff that will go after the ships in the Gulf and the Strait. You see that kind of stuff happening already, by the way. There was a huge strike on some stockpiles of Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles just 24 hours ago. Once that's done, you see the escorts going. And then I think at that point, the president could just call it and say, hey, we took out the missiles, we took out the Navy, the nuclear stuff's buried underground, I'm calling it for now. Maybe the Israelis, you keep doing what you're doing, keep going after the regime, but we're done for now. I could also imagine a world, Scott, in which you see the president seeking some kind of inflection point, some kind of big punctuation mark to close it off. And that could take any number of forms. If he were able to successfully kill Mojtaba, for example, the new supreme leader, the son of the former Ali Khamenei supreme leader, that would be one such inflection point. A successful raid on the nuclear sites, risky though that may be, and that could easily be one of the riskiest and sort of largest scale special operations in American history, if in fact the president orders it. That could be another one. Seizing Karg Island, the key island out in the Persian Gulf through which Iran exports most of its energy resources today. That could be another one. Or destroying those facilities. That has some real cons along with its pros, but I can imagine, we're in the realm of speculation, strategic speculation now, Scott, but I can imagine a world in which the Strait is reopened. There's some sort of event that the White House can point to and say, take that, Iran. That's the exclamation mark on the end of this operation. By the way, the Israelis, they're not letting their foot off the gas anytime soon.
Yeah.
They're going to continue with their policy of regime change. You're already pretty weakened. Let's see how you like that in the weeks, months, maybe years to come. But we're done for now.
Well, the Israelis, I mean, for them, this is the end of October the 7th. And they're not going to permit Iran to ever reconstitute itself in any way, shape, or form that permits these proxies to come back and wage the kind of terrible attacks on Israel that we saw on October the 7th. I imagine, Aaron, we're going to see some sort of groups of countries in the Strait. We're going to see groups of countries with monitoring of Iran long term. I mean, they are religious fanatics, after all. They're never truly going to stop, and they'll have to be watched forever. You can hear Aaron McClain on the School of War podcast. Very experienced guy. He knows of what he speaks. I highly recommend it if you're interested in this and other military issues. Aaron McClain, host of the School of War podcast. Check it out. Aaron, thanks for coming by the Scott Jennings Show. We're done for this hour. We'll take a break. More next hour. Common sense for the American people. Stay with us. Okay, all aboard for the second hour here on Wednesday, March 18th. Live from Arizona State University. It's Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is your host. Quick check of the headlines. And Senator Markwayne Mullin up on Capitol Hill today, this time in his capacity as President Trump's nominee to run the Department of Homeland Security. This is his confirmation hearing. Rand Paul of Kentucky is the chairman of the relevant committee here. There is no love lost between Rand and Markwayne. And right out of the gate, they were into it. Let's listen to Cut 24.
In fact, you said, get your paperwork in. It's got to be 3 days in between.
You offered no apology.
Sir?
And you offer no apology today and no regrets. Haven't heard the word apologize, haven't heard the word regret, haven't heard I misspoke and it was heated and I made a mistake. Haven't heard any of those words.
Sir, actually, it wasn't heated, and I'm not apologizing for pointing out your character.
Good. So you're jolly well fine, and you want the American public and the people up here to vote that may or may not vote for you to know that you supported the felonious, violent attack on me from behind.
I did not say I supported it. I said I understood it. There's a difference.
Oh, so
that
that means you really didn't approve of it, just completely understand it. What do you think most people would interpret completely understand to be? Support for or a condemnation of the violence?
Sir, as I said, we can have our differences. It's not going to keep me from doing my job as Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm going to secure Kentucky and take care of Kentucky as much as I am Oklahoma.
If this were a one-off, it would be one thing. If you just disliked me so much that you approved of violence against me, people could just write it off. Well, maybe they hate each other. But really, there's a pattern of this. Let's go ahead and roll the tape.
Okay, that was Rand Paul questioning Markwayne Mullin in his confirmation hearing. Rand Paul doesn't like some of the statements that Mullin has made about Rand in the past, and that's spilled out into the hearing today. It does seem like Mullin has the votes to be confirmed both in committee and on the Senate floor. President Trump is at Dover Air Force Base today for a dignified remains transfer. Vice President Vance, traveling in Michigan, gave the crowd there his political assessment of the Democratic Party. Let's hear that in Cut 19.
They don't celebrate American victories. They don't vote for lower taxes for American workers. They don't seem to be happy when America is doing well. And fundamentally, the reason I'm here is to get us to remember we've got an election. It seems like it's very far off. But the reality is, in just about 6 months, you're going to be asked to go to the polls, and you're going to be presented a question. Do you support the party that fights for fraud and illegal immigration, or do you support the Republican Party that fights for you, for lower taxes, and for good jobs right here in Michigan?
Vice President Vance there, continuing the president's argument about normal versus crazy, which is a great way to lead into our conversation this hour. And the topic is this: do Democrats want to be normal? There is a new survey analysis of today's Democratic coalition, and it comes to us from the Manhattan Institute, and the author of that is Jesse Arm. Jesse, thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show. Tell us about the survey, the methodology, and how you broke up the Democratic coalition in all this polling data. It's quite fascinating.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Scott. It's great to be with you. I was pretty excited to hear those comments from Vice President Vance right in my home area of Auburn Hills, Michigan. I've got Detroit right on my wall back over there. I believe he also called it the hardest working state in the union, which is a really powerful thing for a guy from Ohio to state. So I give him credit for that.
Tough for the vice president. No doubt that he had to choke on that a little, but Michigan is a purple swing state, so he he got it out nonetheless.
Credit where it's due. I like Michigan maize and blue as it appears on my wall over there, but nevertheless, I appreciate the comments from the vice president. Look, here's what the Manhattan Institute polling that we did makes very clear. There's a real disconnect between the Democratic voters who people imagine and the Democratic voters that actually exist, okay? So the dominant narrative is that the Democratic base is this coalition of socialist revolutionaries and woke militants, but that's not what the data actually shows. So we went out and surveyed 2,600 Democratic voters and Harris supporters. And what did we find? That a plurality, something like 38%, actually say the party should move toward the ideological center. Just 22% want to see it move further to the left. And by a more than 2-to-1 margin, they say that they want leaders who prioritize effective governing as opposed to just fighting Trump all the time. So the median Democratic voter isn't asking for a more radical party. They're asking for something that's actually a lot more normal, closer to the kind of moderation that we heard in the Clinton era. I think you're actually trying to hear some politicians, maybe like Gavin Newsom out in California, try and gesture toward this, albeit in his case, not very convincingly, given the kind of trash heap he's governed over in his time as a Democratic executive. But the reality still remains the same. The problem isn't the Democratic voters being too extreme. It's that they're not getting a party that actually reflects them in Washington.
Well, you just raised the question that I'm going to ask you, and that is, it may be that there are some Democratic voters out there who are wishing for normal. Sadly, their party has been hijacked by leaders who are anything but normal. In fact, they are quite abnormal on a number of issues, whether it's on illegal immigration, trans issues, DEI, We're hearing today that James Talarico in Texas wants to ban meat to fix climate change. I mean, their party is nominating and electing people who are not normal, and they do take extreme positions. Why is it, do you think, that rank-and-file Democrats who prefer a more centrist politics have allowed their party to be hijacked by these progressive radicals? Because, you look around Washington, D.C. I mean, the only normal Democrat in Washington, maybe John Fetterman. I interviewed Rahm Emanuel on this show this week. He's somewhat normal. Outside of that, I don't see a lot of normalcy at the top echelon of the Democratic Party. Do you?
You're exactly right, Scott. Rahm is fairly normal. John Fetterman is extremely normal. I kind of love that guy as my dirty little secret, but you raise a very good question. So if the Democratic voters are this moderate, why does the party look so different? And the answer is that the institutional ecosystem, okay, stay with me here, that governs Democratic politics and has for the last couple of decades is something that is totally inorganic. It's been this rise of a dense network of progressive advocacy groups, nonprofits, activist donors, the George Soros types, and their aligned unions that exert an enormous amount of influence over candidate recruitment, messaging, and setting the real policy priorities that they're going to go out and campaign on, right? Democratic voters, a majority of them do not support transgender men participating in biological female sports. And yet, it's a litmus test that all of these groups that control Democratic politics demand of the politicians that they're going to run for office if they want the money from these actors. So the incentives push you toward escalation, not moderation. And it's often safer to echo the loudest voices than to represent the quieter instincts of your own actual real-life voters. And there is also an economic layer here that's important to factor in. A lot of people in this country benefit from this ecosystem materially. They have jobs that rely on it. They work at these nonprofits, or they're in public sector unions that rely upon government spending as much money as possible with no accounting for actual efficiencies. This is not the Doge constituency, okay? And it creates a real patronage politics that makes moderation not just politically risky, but economically threatening, okay? So this is all why, despite what their voters want, meaningful moderation just isn't likely to come within. And that's why you've got this majority of Democrats that now say they'd be open to something from the outside in 2028.
Yeah, I've wondered if someone not from their current political leadership might pop up in this thing. We'll find out. Read more about this at the Manhattan Institute website. The headline is, Do Democrats Want to Be Normal? And the poll is by Jesse Arm. That's the voice you've been hearing. Jesse, thanks for coming by. This is fascinating work, and we'll have you back to talk about our national politics more in the future. I've got a quick word here from Relief Factor. If you want to be normal, by the way, and you have aches and pains, I'll tell you how to do it. Relief Factor. That's how you get normal. And they've made the formula even better. They have this new premium black pepper extract. It makes the formula more absorbent in your body. Bottom line, it's going to work better. If you're taking it, the formula's better. You're going to like it even more. If it's been on your mind to take it, now's the time to take advantage of it. 3-week quick start. You got nothing to lose here. $19.95. ReliefFactor.com. 1-800-4RELIEF. It's very simple to order. Comes to your house. You get these little packets. We've been doing it in the Jennings household. We vouch and we recommend Relief Factor. I would try it out today. When we come back, more polling showing Trump on solid footing with Republicans. We'll talk about it after this with Jim Jordan on The Scott Jennings Show.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
Okay, if you're headed to an airport anytime in the near future, today, tomorrow, my advice, go early. News reports across the country are that the security lines are stretching out and around buildings, through doors, going places where people have never even seen them before. It's a crisis situation out there caused by Democrats who have shut down the Department of Homeland Security, which includes TSA. The TSA workers are going without pay. 32 days of this now, and our airline system is in crisis. Here to discuss, Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee from Ohio. Congressman, I know you are frustrated, like a lot of Americans, about what the Democrats are doing here. Tell us about the dire situation with TSA and the impacts on our internal security.
Yeah, brought to you by Democrats in the United States Congress at a time when we have a military operation going on in Iran. I mean, this is how ridiculous the Democrat Party has become. And then you add to it all the other crazy policies when it comes to immigration, sanctuary cities, and everything else. This is just crazy.
So we've heard that last night the White House and Senate Democrats exchanged ideas about how to end this. We've not heard any announcements on that today. It seems to me the Democratic demands here, though, on immigration policy are not acceptable. I mean, they effectively want to tie the hands of the federal government when it comes to deporting violent illegal aliens. We cannot accept that.
No, the bottom line is they don't want anyone deported. I mean, we knew this by 4 years of what we saw under Joe Biden. They let in 8 to 10 million people. We all remember seeing the folks camped out under the bridges down there in South Texas. I mean, this is what they want. They want open borders. They want to abolish ICE. I mean, think about this. ICE agents have been spit on, sworn at, harassed, tracked, docked, assaulted, death threats for them and their family. Now they say, oh, that's not enough. We want to get rid of the whole thing. I mean, they don't want any enforcement. They don't want any deportation. And they want this sanctuary jurisdiction policies around the country. It makes no sense. So, that's where they are. And all that, they want all that. And at the same time, don't fund DHS, don't fund the TSA agents at a time we've had, 3-4 terrorist attacks in the last couple weeks while we're in a military operation in Iran. That's craziness. That you define that is craziness. That is what we're seeing, though, from today's Democrat Party.
Let's talk about DHS for a moment. Leadership. Mark-Wayne Mullen in his confirmation hearing today. He got into it with Rand Paul. It feels like he's got the votes. Are you confident in Mark-Wayne Mullen's ability to lead the agency?
Yeah. No, I sure am. Mark-Wayne was a former colleague of ours here in the House, then, of course, went to the Senate. Great United States Senator from the state of Oklahoma. This is the guy the president wants. I think Mark-Wayne will do a great job. And I think he'll get confirmed. I understand there was some personal issues there, differences between Senator Paul and Senator Mark-Wayne Mullen, but I think Mark-Wayne will be great.
Let's talk about Ohio politics briefly before we have to go, Congressman. I saw a little polling this week showing pretty tight races for both governor and U.S. Senate. How are you feeling about the political situation in Ohio for the Republicans?
No, I feel good. I mean, our state, President Trump has changed Ohio. You know politics, Scott. Ohio used to be the bellwether state. I mean, it was a 50-50 state. Now, I mean, President Trump won Ohio in 16 by 8.5. He won it in 20 by 8.5. He won it in 24 by 11.5. So we feel like our state's in good position. Senator Husted's doing a good job. Vivek Ramaswamy, our gubernatorial candidate, is doing a good job getting around the state. I think President Trump will be in our state this fall, which will help with turnout. So as long as I think President Trump is there firing up, our voters in the Buckeye State, I think we'll be fine in both of those races. We want to make sure Senator Husted stays in the Senate. He's doing a good job, and we don't want Sherrod Brown coming back and all his left-wing policies. So, again, I think the president will be in our state. Hopefully this fall, that'll help with turnout. I think we'll win.
Congressman, last question. Where are we on a legislative agenda? When we were together with the House conference in Florida a few days ago, there was a lot of talk about budget reconciliation 2.0. It seemed like most people wanted to do that. That's the easiest way to get something out of the Senate. There were a few naysayers. Where are you on it, and where do you think we're headed on an agenda for the rest of the year?
Well, I do think we should do it. We shouldn't waste this opportunity. We should do it to further scale back ridiculous spending, to address this fraud issue, which is now becoming so prevalent around the country. We've seen Minnesota. We know what's going on in California. So I think that makes sense. And use the supplemental that's coming for our troops and to replenish some of our supplies for our military. Use that as that's, I think, it's going to require reconciliation to get that done.
Jim Jordan is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He represents Ohio in the U.S. House. Congressman, thanks for coming on the show today. We love your updates. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you, Scott. Take care.
All right. When we come back here on the Scott Jennings Show, really excited about this next conversation. Elise Stefanik is here. She is one of the great warriors in the conservative movement. She has a new book coming out called Poisoned Ivies, about her taking on the Ivy League president. She did a great job in that. We'll talk about it next. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
One man standing tall against the leftist mob. Here's Scott Jennings.
We got a great conversation just around the bend here. Elise Stefanik is here, and she's got a great new book coming out in just a couple of weeks. We want to talk about that. First, I do need to give you a quick word. If you're a parent or a grandparent, you need to hear this. Kids are being targeted online through these gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. And big tech is not always doing its best to protect them because they profit from screen time and engagement. And sometimes that means predators slip through the cracks, and when they do, it's families that pay the price. Our friends and partners at Child Help hear from children every day who were contacted through these platforms. These are kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults who were pretending to be someone else. Here's one story. A boy called up Child Help, their National Child Abuse Hotline, in fact, which is a vital resource, and he was terrified and he was ashamed. An adult that he met in an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents about it if he didn't send them. Calling up Child Help and having a chat with a counselor saved his life. It's as simple as that. That's why Child Help matters. Your donation helps save lives. Every $27 saves one child from abuse. $27 is all we're asking for today. I'm a donor. I know the leadership. I've been to the headquarters. I vouch for our friends at Child Help. Go to childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878 and give $27 today. It's Scott Jennings on Salem, common sense for the American people. Joining me now, an old friend, an excellent, vital member of the House Republican majority representing New York's 21st District in the House. And if you don't remember, let me remind you of the day she torched Ivy League presidents over their absolute ridiculous malfeasance when it comes to anti-Semitism on campus. Let's play these bangers from that glorious hearing. Start with cut 2.
This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, "There is only one solution, Intifada revolution," and, quote, "globalize the Intifada." Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus. Yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for Intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you not say here that it is against the code of conduct at Harvard?
I will never forget this. This was one of the greatest moments in the last 20 years in the annals of congressional hearings. Our guest is Elise Stefanik. She has a book coming out on this subject. It's called Poisoned Ivies, the inside account of the academic and moral rot at America's elite universities. Elise, welcome to the show. Really honored to have you today.
Scott, great to be with you. And even hearing those clips a few years later, it is stunning. It is the reason why it's the most watched congressional testimony in history with over 1 billion views. And by the way, those two university presidents of Penn and Harvard are former presidents because of that hearing.
That's exactly right. When a lot of people in our world, Elise, are asking for accountability, you're one of the few politicians that went out and got some. And that's why I think this book is going to sell like crazy. It's called Poisoned Ivies. You've written an entire book here about what you uncovered, this rot going on at America's elite universities. Tell us about the book. I know it comes out in a couple of weeks. I want to hear how you've written it, how you decided to write it, how we can get it. Tell the listeners, because I think this is going to be a must-grab for everybody who loves the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, I wrote Poisoned Ivies because, as I just mentioned, Scott, this was the hearing heard around the world. It was over 1 billion views, and people frankly, no matter what their political affiliation, people understood in a moment that American higher education was on the wrong track. At our most elite schools, Harvard, MIT, Penn, the lack of moral clarity was stunning for the world to see. And it led to an earthquake that we are still undergoing in higher education. It led to congressional subpoenas being issued, a very fulsome investigation that uncovered not only the rot of anti-Semitism that is deep into these institutions, but frankly, anti-Americanism. These same pro-Hamas encampments that were shouting death to Israel were also shouting death to America. The book also highlights stories of American Jewish students and what they faced on these campuses, whether it was the mapping project at MIT, which would go after Jewish-owned businesses or Jewish student organizations or Jewish professors. It's so far from the founding missions of these universities. So I thought this was a topic that resonates with the American people, with everyday Americans. And I'll tell you, I think a lot about the question that I asked. If I ask my constituents, they know how to answer the question correctly. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your code of conduct? They will say unequivocally, yes. A farmer, a small business worker, and a mom, something is deeply wrong when university presidents failed. So this book goes into depth about Harvard, Penn, Columbia, MIT, and more. It also puts forth solutions on how to address this. It comes out April 14th, and you can order it at EliseStefanik.com.
I love this. Okay, the book is called Poisoned Ivies. April the 14th, it's available. Here's my question. You did such a great job holding these university presidents accountable. And what you uncovered was this anti-Semitism, this strain of violence that they were helping foment on these campuses. And given everything you know from these hearings, from your work on this book, and also just your work in Congress, tell me this. Is the West in danger? I think it is, and I think this is part of it. This whole anti-Semitic, globalize the Intifada, all of it, it's all part of it. It's a part of a campaign to tear down and destroy the West, and you've been at the forefront of defending the West. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you, Scott. I couldn't agree more. And you have been on the front lines, as I have, in standing up not only for moral clarity, but for Western civilization. This is a battle about protecting Western civilization. And this book talks about that. And what's interesting is I go back to the founding missions of these universities. When you take Harvard, for example, which is my alma mater, it was not like that there when I was an undergraduate. This was an institution that was founded prior to the Revolutionary War, prior to our country's founding. It was founded on moral truths, and the motto of Harvard is Veritas, meaning truth. But the initial motto in the 1600s of Harvard was in Christo et Ecclesiae, so truth in Christ and the church. There is moral truth, and the fact that there is moral equivalency being conducted on these university campuses, it's taking us in the wrong direction, away from that moral truth. This is a fight that's not going to be fixed overnight, and I want to give credit to President Trump, who put forth incredible executive orders to address this on day one, but we need to address all aspects of this: taxpayer funding for our universities, the failed tenure program for professors, as well as foreign dollars that are flowing into these universities to undermine Western ideals.
Are these universities salvageable, redeemable at this point? Is the rot too deep? Is it too mangled and tangled inside? I mean, can you ever unravel this? Because it's gotten pretty thick on a lot of these campuses, hasn't it?
It goes very deep, and it's not just the presidents, as we know. You can remove the presidents, but you have to address the rot. You know, the professors have becoming increasingly to the left, and we're not talking about, you know, the Democrat Party of our parents and grandparents. We're talking about anti-Americanism. I go in depth on that at the Columbia chapter. And we know these universities aren't going to fix themselves. So President Trump correctly withheld taxpayer funds because these schools are not entitled to hard-earned taxpayer funds. What I do put forth in the book is schools that are getting it right. So if you look at Vanderbilt, if you look at some of the schools down south, they are addressing this with moral leadership, and you're also seeing matriculation trends skyrocket because of increased interest in those schools. I would also look at the University of Austin, UTX, that school that was founded in 2021 that stands for pro-American Western values, and really the freedom of inquiry and not this warped situation that's happening at these Ivy Leagues. I also point out the one Ivy League, Dartmouth, and this is a credit to the president of Dartmouth, Sion Leah Biel. Wheelock, who handled this correctly on her campus. That was really the only Ivy League that did this. So it's going to take a deep, deep delve to fix this over time. But I also think it's important to highlight who is getting it right.
Elise Stefanik is our guest. She has a book coming out in a couple of weeks called Poisoned Ivies, and I could not recommend it any more highly than I am right now. This is going to be a must-read for everybody who cares about higher education in America and the future of Western civilization. Elise, let me ask you a question. We have seen 4 major Islamic terror attacks just in the last couple of weeks. Are we in for more of this? Have we allowed radical Islam to infiltrate this country? We have the Department of Homeland Security shut down because of Democrats. We have these terrorist attacks going on. We're fighting Iran overseas. Can we expect more of this? Are you concerned about that?
Well, I'm very concerned, and I think there's a direct line of what happened on these elite campuses after October 7th to the increase in terrorist attacks today. There is a direct line with that. If you look at whether it's the terrorist attack in New York City, where you had an IED from a pro-ISIS terrorist, or whether it's the terrorist attack in Michigan, I'm deeply concerned, and I want to highlight a policy issue that is in front of us today. The fact that funding for DHS is shut down because of Democrats shows that they are not serious about protecting the homeland. That funding is critical, whether it's TSA or whether it is DHS. I'm also very concerned if you look at the foreign visas for students on these campuses. If you look at SJP, for example, the foreign funding nexus, it is fomenting the anti-Americanism, and there is a direct line in terms of the moral equivalency and, frankly, the embrace of Hamas and other terrorist organizations.
Elise, you've got a book coming out. You're leaving Congress, sadly, but long future ahead of you. What's coming next? I know you want to sell books, and we're going to do everything we can do to help you with that. A lot of us want to see Elise back in the public policy sphere. You may not have any announcements today, but please assure us you're not going anywhere, right?
I'm not going anywhere. I am up for this fight. This is my first of what I hope and know will be many books. This is a deep dive. This is not about me. This is about what is happening at our nation's schools, Poison Ivies. It comes out April 14th. I'm looking forward to continuing to stand up for moral clarity and our America First values. And I appreciate your friendship, Scott. I've known you for over 20 years and so proud of your success.
Well, Elise, we're proud of you, and you are a great warrior for the West, a great warrior for the conservative cause. We are excited to read your book. We can't wait to buy it, and we will, as soon as it comes out, we're going to devour that and talk about it on the air. Elise Stefanik from New York, thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. A quick word, by the way, from our friends at IFCJ, the International Fellowship for Christians and Jews. They are putting together the emergency supplies that people in the Holy Land need right now because they are under constant rocket attacks as this Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion continues. This is stuff like food, first aid, emergency essentials that go into these bomb shelters, and they go to security personnel who are helping out at the hospitals and in the emergency rooms. It's the most vulnerable in Israel that need our help right now. The sick, the elderly, families with children, they depend on IFCJ. They depend on the fellowship for help in these critical, dangerous times. I hope that you will join me and join Christians and Jews around the world in praying for the protection of Israel. Stand with Israel in prayer today. Go to supportifcj.org. That is supportifcj.org. I'm going to do it myself. I'm encouraging all of my friends and family to do it. We need the support for Israel. Support ifcj.org. Little healthcare talk when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Know how to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
The Happy Warrior is here on Wednesday, March 18th. Quick note in breaking news here to the Scott Jennings Show. The Federal Reserve Chairman Powell has just announced there will not be any rate cuts at this time, so the Fed holding rates steady. Let's have a little healthcare talk to close out the show today. Now, if you've been watching any healthcare debates in Washington at all, you know right now President Trump is not the biggest fan of insurance companies. His Great American Health Plan, in fact, is all about addressing what he calls the health insurance scam. Here's the president, by the way, recently on Air Force One in Cut 17.
I don't want to give the insurance companies any money. They've been ripping off the public for years.
And speaking of insurance companies ripping off the public, The examples continue to pile up, showing why President Trump is right to take on these giant insurers. Coming on the show right now is Terrence Romitar from the American Ambulance Association to talk about the ambulance crisis facing rural America because insurance companies aren't paying the ambulance bills. Terrence, welcome to the show, and tell us what is going on with these insurance companies and ambulance service coverage. We need to know.
Yeah, first of all, Scott, thanks for having me on. Terrence Romitar with the American Ambulance Association, and we're dealing with this crisis state by state across the country. What happens today is when you're having a medical emergency, you're not calling the health insurance companies to find out what ambulance service is in network. So unlike when you have a non-emergency situation, you need a podiatrist, you would normally go to their website or maybe call them and figure out which podiatrist is in network. When you're having a medical emergency, you're calling 911. The health insurance companies expect you to find an in-network ambulance service. That's not how this country is built. That's not how first responder services are built. So we respond, we take care of the medical emergency. When that medical emergency is over, we have to submit those charges to health insurance companies. Because most of these services are considered out of network, we're not the typical brick and mortar health facilities. They don't reimburse the ambulance services, and instead they pass the bill on to the patient.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. I'm a layperson in all of this. So the first responders show up, they get the patients to the hospital, and then the insurance companies say, no, we're not paying for the ambulance service? I mean, this seems crazy to me. How else are you going to get to the hospital? Is that what happens?
Absolutely. So they're paying an arbitrary amount, what they determine is necessary. And a lot of times that is a fraction of the bill. Scott, in your state in Kentucky, we're looking at data across the state. They're paying less than half of the bill. And in some cases, they're paying 10 and 15% of the bill and sending the majority of the bill to the patient. So now you're out of the hospital, we saved your life, and now you're dealing with a large bill that your health plan won't cover. And so that leads the ambulance services to try to find other ways for funding to make sure that we can get there on time, that we can have decent response times, that we're there in time to save your life. And so a lot of that burden then goes to the taxpayers in counties that can afford it. And if they can't afford it, that comes out in terms of response time. So there's not enough ambulances on the road, there's not enough personnel. We can't pay our workers, our EMTs and paramedics that are doing that heroic job. So we are fighting state by state as an industry to fix this problem.
Well, that was my next question is what are we going to do about this? I've read that in many states, you do have state legislators and people like you who are putting together coalitions to fight back against the insurance companies. Tell us about the fight. I guess it's really going on across the country, isn't it?
It is. And, it's a David and Goliath situation, right? We're ambulance service providers. We're small as compared to the big health plans. We don't have this lobby, but we are introducing legislation. So today, there's almost 20 states that have passed legislation to ensure that the health plans are paying the cost of those services, whether they're paying the rates that are set by the county or they're paying some minimal allowable rate, but they can't continue to pay a fraction of the cost. So right now, looking across the states, there's probably another 6 to 8 states that have legislation moving down the pipeline in a good way. We've got Georgia moving, we've got Tennessee moving, Montana, Wisconsin. We're working on other states. We're working in Kentucky. We're working in Alabama to pass legislation to protect the first responder services, but more so protect the patients and ensure that they have access to emergency care when their loved one is facing a dire medical emergency.
That voice you're hearing, Terrence Romitar from the American Ambulance Association. Bottom line, health insurance companies right now not being very good actors when it comes to getting you into an ambulance and off to the hospital. We got to get that fixed. That's what Terrence is doing. Terrence, American Ambulance is at ambulance.org if you want to check it out online. We've come to the end of the show. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Arizona. We had great shows out here. It's Common Sense for the American people. We'll see you tomorrow.